The
Do it
stone
now.
walls of
You will do
Cascade Castle
exactly as
stood
I
ancient
say.
and
No,
unyielding
please
against the
stop. I
Washington
can't do
wilderness.
this anymore.
Nestled deep within the Olympic Mountains where humans rarely ventured, the fortress had housed generations of wolf royalty, its secrets kept safe from the outside world. Tonight, those same walls felt like a prison to Arya, as guards led her through torch-lit corridors, their grip firm on her bound wrists. Her footsteps echoed against cold stone, each one bringing her closer to her new owner. The word made bile rise in her throat. Sold. The daughter of a once proud pack leader reduced to property. The transaction completed with her stepmother's elegant signature and a bag of gold coins that would secure alliances and pay debts that were never Arya's to begin with. The guards paused before massive oak doors. One nodded to the other, and they swung open to reveal a chamber bathed in firelight. Arya's heart hammered against her ribs as they pushed her forward, then retreated, the heavy doors closing behind them with a sound like fate itself. She stood alone, eyes adjusting to the dimmer light. The room was surprisingly sparse for royal quarters. A large bed dominated one wall opposite a fireplace, whose flames cast dancing shadows across stone floors covered with fur rugs. A table, several chairs, bookshelves filled with ancient texts, and there, half silhouetted against the fire, sat the man they called the Wolf King, Thorn. Even his name inspired fear and respect throughout the territories. His shoulders were broad beneath a simple black shirt, his posture relaxed, yet somehow still radiating power. When he looked up, his eyes caught hers, and Arya felt her breath hitch. They weren't cruel as she'd expected, but unreadable, assessing. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken expectations. Arya's chest tightened painfully. She knew what happened to Omegas purchased by Alphas. Flesh was never asked, only taken. Better to attack than to cower. You paid for me, now do it. Her voice cut through the quiet, sharp and defiant, the words echoing off stone. She expected him to rise immediately to claim what he'd bought, to prove himself the beast everyone whispered he was. Instead, Thorn remained seated, studying her as though she were a wild thing he dared not approach. His jaw tightened, his eyes burning with something she couldn't name. Not like this, he said finally, his voice deeper than she'd anticipated, carrying more danger in its calmness than any shout. Arya blinked, her throat closing around words that suddenly wouldn't come. Not like this. She had just thrown herself at the pyre, and the king refused to let it burn. Fury surged through her veins. You bought me, didn't you? That makes me yours. She spat the words. Or do you prefer those noble ladies waiting at your door? Am I just practice? Thorn rose, then each movement deliberate until he stood before her. He was taller than she remembered from the auction, his presence overwhelming. He reached out not to grab, but to brush one finger along the rope at her wrist. With a practiced motion, the knot loosened, the bindings falling away. You are not practice, his eyes caught hers, scorching. If I touch you, it will not be because I bought you. It will be because you begged me not to stop. Something flipped in Arya's stomach, rage tangling with an emotion far more dangerous. Heat. Her body betrayed her, trembling under his gaze. She shoved him hard. Arrogant bastard. You think I would ever beg? His lips curved into a faint smirk. You already are. Her breath caught. She hated him. Hated how the silence between them pulsed like a living thing. Hated how her body ached to know what his hands felt like, even as her mind screamed to stay untouched, unbroken. Arya turned away, desperate to hide the confusion on her face. Go ahead, prove me right. Take one of them instead. I'll sleep easier knowing I was spared. His hand landed on her arm, not rough, not forcing, just steady heat that rooted her in place. His voice dropped, softer than before, but sharper too. Do not mistake my restraint for disinterest, Arya. You scorch me more than all their painted smiles combined. That is exactly why I won't touch you. His eyes held hers, unwavering. Not until you want it. Her breath shuddered out of her lungs. Her heart pounded so hard it hurt. She pulled free of his grip and fled to the far side of the chamber, back pressed to cold stone. His words tangled in her mind, tearing at the truth she refused to face. Want it. She would never want him. Would she? The fire snapped in the hearth. Thorn stood silent, his gaze never wavering. It was not the look of a man who owned her. It was the look of a man already bound, already at war with himself. The memory came unbidden, cutting through her anger. She had been 7 when her mother died, leaving her at the mercy of her father's new wife, Eleanor. Gone were the warm embraces, replaced by cold calculation. Stand straighter, speak softer. No alpha will want a wild thing. Her father, once strong and proud, grew weaker as Eleanor whispered poison in his ear. The pack fractured under her influence. Then came the rumors of his betrayal, his imprisonment somewhere Arya couldn't reach. Eleanor became regent, and Arya became currency. Her childhood home in the coastal forest felt worlds away from this mountain fortress. She remembered running free through the trees, her father teaching her to track, to hunt, to be proud of who she was. Never forget, little one, your blood carries our legacy. How could that same blood be so worthless now? Morning light spilled through tall windows, revealing details lost in last night's shadows. The chamber was larger than she'd realized, its furnishings expensive, but worn with age and use. Thorne was gone, having spent the night elsewhere after insisting Arya take the bed. She'd been too exhausted to argue, falling into dreamless sleep despite her fear. A soft knock broke the silence. Before Arya could respond, the door opened to reveal a young woman with copper hair pulled into a practical braid. She carried a tray of food and a bundle of clothing. "Good morning, I'm Riley." Her smile seemed genuine, surprising in this place of power and intrigue. "King Thorne asked me to attend to you." Arya eyed her suspiciously. "His spy, you mean?" Riley set down the tray and clothes, unbothered by the accusation. "I serve the castle, not any one person's agenda. You'll learn the difference soon enough." She gestured to the bundle. "Fresh clothes, breakfast, and an invitation to join court this afternoon if you're feeling up to it. And if I'm not, then I'll tell them you're resting. No one will disturb you." Arya approached cautiously, his stomach growling at the sight of fresh bread and fruit. "Why is he doing this? Pretending to care about my comfort?" Riley's eyes softened with something like pity. "Perhaps it's not pretense." After Riley left, Arya examined the clothes. Not servant's garb as she'd expected, but fine things in deep greens and blues. She changed reluctantly, hating how well they fit, as if he'd known her measurements precisely. The thought sent an unwelcome shiver down her spine. Fed and dressed curiosity overcame caution. Arya tested the chamber door, surprised to find it unlocked. The corridor beyond was empty of guards. A test, perhaps, or a trap. Either way, she would not waste the opportunity to learn the layout of her prison. The castle was a maze of corridors and stairways. Servants moved purposefully, casting curious glances her way, but offering no challenge. She followed the sound of voices to a large hall where sunlight streamed through stained glass, painting the stone floor in jeweled patterns. "The new acquisition explores." The voice, cold and amused, came from a tall man with silver at his temples and Thorne's strong jawline. He approached with the confidence of someone who knew his power. "I am Lord Marcus, the king's uncle and advisor. I'm not an acquisition." "No." He circled her slowly. "What would you call yourself, then? Guest prisoner?" His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Pet." Arya's wolf stirred beneath her skin, responding to the threat in his tone. "I am no one's pet." Bold words from a purchased Omega. Marcus stopped before her, too close. "My nephew always had unusual tastes. Tell me what makes you so special that he pays gold instead of taking what any alpha could claim by right." Before Arya could respond, another voice cut through the tension. "Uncle, you're frightening our guest." Thorne appeared beside them, his presence immediately changing the atmosphere. He wore formal attire today, black leather and silver emblems of office, his dark hair pulled back to reveal the sharp planes of his face. Beside him stood a severe-looking man with watchful eyes. "Merely introducing myself, nephew." Marcus stepped back, bowing with exaggerated courtesy. "Since you neglected to do so." "Arya, my uncle Lord Marcus." Thorne's voice remained level, but Arya sensed the tension beneath it. "And this is Caleb, my first minister." Caleb's gaze was analytical, assessing her worth to the kingdom in a single glance. "The White Omega. She looks common." White Omega. The term sent ice through Arya's veins. Stories told to frighten young wolves of special Omegas sacrificed during the moonbinding ritual if they failed to harmonize with their alpha. Surely such barbarism was ancient history. "We'll discuss preparations privately, Caleb." Thorne's tone ended further comment. "Uncle, the northern delegates await your expertise." Marcus inclined his head and departed, but not before sending Arya a look that made her skin crawl. Caleb lingered. 3 weeks until the full moon. Your Majesty, the pack grows restless. His gaze flicked to Arya. They need reassurance that this one will succeed where others failed. Others, the word hung between them as Caleb departed, leaving Arya alone with Thorn. What did he mean by White Omega? She demanded, keeping her voice low. What happened to the others? Thorn's expression remained impassive. Court begins soon. We'll discuss this later. No, now. Arya stepped closer, fear transforming to anger. If you bought me for some ritual sacrifice, I deserve to know. Something flickered across his face, not anger, but something more complex. Is that what you believe, that I would purchase you only to destroy you? I don't know what to believe, she hissed. I know nothing about you, except that you paid gold for me, and now everyone looks at me like I'm either precious or doomed. Thorn scanned the hall, then took her elbow, guiding her to a small antechamber where they could speak privately. He released her immediately once the door closed behind them. The moon binding is an ancient ceremony performed every decade. It requires an alpha and omega pair to complete a ritual that secures the pack's prosperity and power. His voice was measured, as though reciting facts taught long ago. Traditionally, the alpha king chooses an omega who complements his nature. And if they don't complement each other, Thorn's jaw tightened. In the past, failure was considered an ill omen. The ritual would be concluded differently. Sacrifice. The word fell like stone between them. That was the old way, before my time. But not so long ago that people have forgotten. Arya wrapped her arms around herself. Is that why you bought me for this ritual? I bought you to prevent others from buying you. The intensity in his voice startled her. There are those who believe the old ways should return, who would have used you and discarded you when you served your purpose. So instead, I'm your prisoner until this ritual. You're under my protection. He emphasized each word. After the ceremony, if you wish to leave, I will ensure your safe passage anywhere you choose. Arya studied him, searching for deception. Why would you do that? What do you gain? Thorn looked away, something like pain crossing his features. Not everything is transaction, Arya. In my experience, everything is. She moved toward the door. When did you decide I was to be your ceremonial partner, at the auction or before? His hesitation told her everything. We should join the court. How long have you been watching me, Thorn? His eyes met hers, something ancient in their depths. Longer than you know. The great hall teemed with activity by midday. Nobles from various territories milled about, their hierarchies evident in their dress and manner. Alphas dominated the center of the room, their postures commanding attention. Betas moved efficiently at the edges, managing the flow of business. The few Omegas present stayed close to their Alphas, eyes downcast except when directly addressed. Arya felt their stares as Thorn led her to a seat near his throne. Not beside it as a mate would sit, but close enough to signal importance. The message was clear to all watching. She was under his personal protection. A beautiful woman with golden hair approached her, smile perfect, but her eyes sharp as she assessed Arya. Your Majesty, how unexpected to see you entertaining company today. Lady Diana. Thorn's greeting was polite but cool. I believe council matters require your father's attention. Father sent me in his stead. Her gaze slid to Arya. He thought perhaps I might provide feminine insight regarding the upcoming celebrations. How thoughtful. Thorn's tone suggested otherwise. Diana's smile remained fixed. Indeed, especially given the unusual nature of your chosen companion. Her eyes traveled over Arya's form. So wild. One must wonder if she can be properly trained before the ceremony. Arya's fingers curled into fists. Perhaps His Majesty prefers authenticity to artifice. Diana's smile faltered for just a moment. How charming. Raw, untamed opinions. She turned back to Thorn. A refreshing change from political acumen and social grace, I'm sure. Lady Diana. Thorn's voice carried a warning edge. The council awaits. With a graceful curtsy that somehow conveyed contempt, Diana withdrew. Your girlfriend seems charming, Arya muttered when she was out of earshot. She is not my anything. Thorn's response was clipped. Her father is a powerful pack leader. She has ambitions to be queen. She'd make a more suitable partner than me. Suitable is not what I seek. Their conversation ended as Caleb approached with several elders in tow. The rest of the afternoon blurred into a parade of introductions and thinly veiled assessments. Each interaction reinforced Arya's understanding she was an outsider, unexpected, unwelcome by many. As evening approached, Riley appeared at Arya's side. The king suggests you might wish to retire before dinner. The first day at court can be overwhelming. Grateful for the escape, Arya followed Riley back to her chambers. Once there, she collapsed onto a chair. They all look at me like I'm either going to save them or destroy them. Riley busied herself lighting more candles. The moon binding is taken very seriously. It's been 3 generations since an Omega successfully completed the ritual. Arya sat up straighter. What happens to those who fail? Riley's hands stilled. They disappear. The official record states they choose to leave the territory afterward. And unofficially, there are stories. Riley lowered her voice. Lord Marcus serves as ritual master. Some say he ensures failure when it suits certain interests. What interest? Those who believe Thorne's progressive leadership weakens the pack. Those who prefer the old, which when alphas ruled through fear rather than respect. Arya moved to the window, staring out at the mountains beyond. Escape suddenly seemed both more necessary and more impossible. Why would Thorne choose me? There must be dozens of more suitable candidates. Riley approached her, expression serious. The king has his reasons. Perhaps you should ask him yourself. That night, Arya waited in the chamber, determined to confront Thorne. When he finally appeared, he looked weary, the weight of his crown evident in the set of his shoulders. You have questions. He spoke before she could begin. Yes, to them. Why me? Thorne moved to the fire, staring into the flames. The Omega must be strong enough to withstand the ritual energies. Strong-willed. Independent. There are many strong Omegas. None who challenge me as you do. He turned to face her. The ritual requires balance, equals in spirit, if different in nature. You've been watching me. It wasn't a question this time. How long? Silence stretched between them. Finally he spoke. 5 years, since your father's territories bordered mine. The revelations struck like physical pain. You knew him before he was imprisoned. I knew of him, a fair leader, respected. Thorne's gaze was steady. His downfall was unexpected. It was betrayal. My stepmother poisoned him against his allies, isolated him, then claimed he plotted against neighboring packs. And you believe otherwise. I know otherwise. Arya's voice cracked. He was many things but never disloyal. Thorne studied her, something like compassion in his eyes. That is why I chose you, Arya. Because despite everything taken from you, you remain unbroken. True. Pretty words from the man who bought me. I paid to free you, not to own you. He approached slowly, stopping when she tensed. After the ceremony, you'll have resources, protection. Freedom to find the truth about your father. Why would you help me? Because wolves should not be caged. His voice lowered. Even those who scorch their keepers with every glance. The intensity in his gaze made her heart race. Something passed between them, electric and dangerous. Arya broke it first, turning away. How do I know this ritual won't kill me? Because I will be there. The certainty in his voice was absolute. And I protect what is mine. I am not yours. For now the world believes you are. That protection is real regardless of what exists between us. The logic was sound even if it chafed. What exactly does this ritual entail? We have 3 weeks to prepare. Tomorrow, we begin training. Training for what? Thorne moved toward the door that connected to adjoining chambers. For the most difficult task of all, his eyes held hers, learning to trust one another. After he left, Arya paced the room, mind racing. If what Riley said was true, forces within the castle wished her to fail. If what Thorne claimed was true, he had purchased her to save her from worse fates. Neither possibility settled well. From the window, the mountains beckoned, dark and promising freedom. Could she run? Possibly. Survive alone? Perhaps, but what then? Without resources or allies, finding her father would be impossible. For now, she would play along. Learn everything about this ritual, this castle, these wolves. Gain Thorne's trust, and when the moment came, she would make her choice on her own terms. She did not see the shadow that moved beneath her window, did not hear the whispered conversation between figures concealed in darkness. The king grows attached already. As expected, his weakness for strays is predictable. And the girl, defiant, suspicious, perfect for our purposes. The council grows concerned. If she succeeds where others failed, she won't. I'll make certain of it. And Thorn will learn that kings who behave like common wolves lose their crowns. Lord Marcus stepped from the shadows, moonlight catching the silver in his hair. One way or another. Morning came too quickly. Arya woke to Riley setting out training clothes far more practical than yesterday's finery. The king awaits you in the eastern courtyard. When the courtyard was actually a large clearing bordered by ancient pines hidden within the castle walls. Thorn stood at its center, dressed for training, rather than court, his powerful frame evident without royal regalia. The moon-binding ritual has three components. He began without preamble. Physical synchronicity, mental alignment, and spiritual harmony. We begin with the first. Synchronicity means fighting together. It means moving as one. He circled her slowly, in human form and wolf form. I've never shifted in front of an alpha before. The admission came reluctantly. Something softened in his expression. The ritual requires comfort with both natures. We start small. Today, just movement. Basic defensive patterns. He demonstrated his movements fluid and precise. Arya mimicked him, her natural grace making the patterns come easily. Hours passed as they worked through increasingly complex sequences. By midday, they moved in near-perfect unison, anticipating each other's steps. Good. Approval warmed his voice. Your body remembers what your mind resists. Arya paused, breathing hard. What does that mean? Wolves are not meant to be alone, Arya. Pack instinct lives in our bones, regardless of rank. He offered her water, careful that their fingers didn't touch. You fight it because you fear losing yourself. I fight it because I've seen what happens to Omegas who surrender to it. His eyes darkened. Not all alphas abuse their power. Forgive me if I lack sufficient examples to believe that. Thorn accepted this without argument. Rest. We continue this afternoon. As Arya crossed the courtyard toward the shade of a large oak, she noticed movement along the castle wall. Lord Marcus stood observing them, his expression unreadable at this distance. Beside him was Lady Diana, golden hair gleaming in the sunlight. Their presence sent a chill through her despite the warm day. Riley appeared with lunch settling beside Arya beneath the tree. You're doing well, the king is pleased. I didn't realize I was performing for an audience. Arya nodded toward the observers. Riley followed her gaze, frowning slightly. Lord Marcus oversees all ritual preparations. Lady Diana has no official role, just keeping an eye on the competition. She's believed herself destined for queenship since childhood. Your arrival complicates her plans. I have no interest in being queen. Riley's smile was knowing. Perhaps, but you have the king's attention, which is more than she's managed in years of trying. After lunch, training intensified. Thorn pushed her harder, testing her limits, forcing her to rely on instinct rather than thought. By sunset, they moved together in perfect coordination, their bodies finding natural rhythm, even as their minds remained wary. Tomorrow we begin mental alignment. Thorn toweled sweat from his neck. It requires more proximity. Arya tensed. What kind of proximity? Nothing inappropriate. His tone was carefully neutral. But we must learn to share thoughts, intentions, to communicate without words. Is that possible between strangers? We are not strangers, Arya. His gaze was steady. What anymore? That night, exhaustion should have brought dreamless sleep. Instead, Arya tossed restlessly, haunted by fragments of memory and fear. In her dreams, she ran through endless forests, pursued by shadows with gleaming teeth and her stepmother's cold laugh. She woke gasping to find moonlight streaming through her window. The castle slept around her silent, except for the occasional guard's footsteps. Driven by restlessness, she slipped from bed and into the corridor, following instinct rather than direction. Her wandering led to a small library tucked away in a forgotten corner of the castle. She pushed open the heavy door to find soft lamplight illuminating ancient texts and scrolls. And there, bent over a massive tome, sat Thorn. He looked up, unsurprised by her presence. Trouble sleeping. Dreams. She hesitated at the threshold. What are you doing awake? Kings rarely enjoy uninterrupted rest. He gestured to the chair across from him. Join me if you wish. Arya approached cautiously, curiosity overcoming caution. The book before him showed detailed illustrations of the moon-binding ritual. Two figures, Alpha and Omega, standing within concentric circles inscribed with ancient symbols. Looking for loopholes. She settled into the chair. Looking for truth. He turned the page to reveal more text in a language she couldn't read. The ritual has been modified over generations, not always for the better. You believe something was changed deliberately. His eyes met hers approval in their depths. You're perceptive. No, just familiar with manipulation. She leaned forward, studying the illustrations. What part concerns you? This. He pointed to a sequence showing the Omega kneeling before the Alpha. The earliest texts described partners of equal standing throughout the ceremony. Later versions introduced hierarchy. Convenient for alphas. Convenient for those who benefit from division. He closed the book carefully. The original purpose of the ritual was to blend alpha strength with omega intuition, creating balance that would sustain the pack. And now it reinforces the very divisions it was meant to heal. The realization dawned slowly. You're using the ritual to change things. I'm restoring what was lost. His expression grew serious, which makes certain factions very nervous. Like your uncle. Thorne's silence was confirmation enough. Arya considered the implications, pieces falling into place. The previous Omegas who disappeared, they weren't sacrificed because they failed. They were eliminated because success would threaten the existing power structure. Thorne's voice was grim. A structure my uncle and his allies have carefully maintained. Why tell me this? I could be working for them. Are you, Their eyes locked across the table. No. Then we have common purpose, however reluctant. This puts an even larger target on my back. It puts my protection around you even more firmly. He leaned forward. I can't force you to trust me, Arya. But know this, I did not bring you here to watch you fail. In that moment, something shifted between them. Not trust deeply, but recognition. Allies of necessity in a castle full of enemies. What happens tomorrow with this mental alignment? We learn to open our minds to each other, to share intent without revealing vulnerability. Is that possible? With practice, with willingness? His gaze was steady, with courage. Arya thought of all she'd lost, all that remained at stake. Finding her father, discovering the truth, perhaps even changing the fate of Omegas who would come after her. Then we begin at dawn. As she left the library, Arya felt eyes watching from shadows. Whether friend or foe, she couldn't tell. But for the first time since entering Cascade Castle, she felt something unexpected taking root beneath her fear and anger. Purpose. Dawn painted the mountains with golden light as Arya made her way to the eastern courtyard. Sleep had been elusive after her midnight conversation with Thorne, her mind racing with revelations and possibilities. The weight of what they faced pressed upon her shoulders, making each step feel heavier than the last. Thorne waited in the center of the clearing, his tall figure silhouetted against the rising sun. Unlike yesterday's physical training today, he had arranged cushions on a woven mat, creating an intimate space that made Arya's pulse quicken with uncertainty. Mental alignment requires proximity, he explained as she approached. We must learn to sense each other's intentions without words. Arya stopped at the edge of the mat, eyeing the arrangement skeptically. How exactly does this work? We begin with seated meditation, focusing on our own breathing. Then we gradually extend awareness toward each other. He gestured for her to sit across from him. Nothing invasive, just awareness. Reluctantly, Arya settled onto the cushion, keeping as much distance between them as the mat allowed. Thorne sat cross-legged, his posture relaxed yet dignified. Close your eyes. Find your center. For several minutes, they sat in silence. Arya tried to focus on her breathing, but awareness of Thorne's presence kept pulling at her consciousness. His sense, subtle but distinctly alpha, filled her senses. The sound of his steady breathing created a rhythm that her own lungs wanted to match. You're resisting, Thorne observed without opening his eyes. I'm trying, Don't try. Allow. His voice gentled. Wolves sense pack members instinctively. We've trained ourselves to block this natural connection, believing isolation means safety. For Omegas, it often does. Not here, not now. He finally opened his eyes, capturing hers. I won't breach your boundaries, Arya. But for this to work, you must lower your walls slightly. Something in his steady gaze convinced her to try again. She closed her eyes, exhaled slowly, and imagined her mental barriers becoming translucent rather than solid. Almost immediately, she sensed a subtle shift in the air between them, as if the space itself had become charged. Thorn's presence expanded in her awareness, not invasive but encompassing, like stepping into warm water. She could feel his calm determination, his patience, and beneath it all, something deeper she couldn't quite name. Good, he murmured. Now try to sense my movements before I make them. Without warning, he raised his right hand. Arya felt the intention, a heartbeat, before his muscles engaged. Her eyes flew open in surprise. I felt that. His smile was subtle but genuine. Again. They practiced for hours, Thorn gradually increasing the complexity of movements. By midday, Arya could anticipate not just physical motion, but simple intentions. When Thorn decided to end the session, she knew it before he spoke. You have natural aptitude for this, he acknowledged as they broke for lunch. Most take days to achieve what you've managed in hours. Perhaps desperation is a powerful motivator. Arya accepted the water Riley brought, nodding thanks. Or perhaps you're exactly who you need to be. Thorn's gaze lingered on her face, making something flutter in her chest. A commotion near the castle entrance drew their attention. A contingent of richly dressed wolves had arrived, their banners displaying the crest of a neighboring territory. At their center stood an elegantly dressed older woman with a sharp gaze that immediately found Thorn. The Silver Crest delegation arrives early, Thorn muttered, rising to his feet. Is that a problem? It complicates the schedule. His jaw tightened slightly. Lady Diana's mother leads them. She's a formidable political force. Arya felt a stab of unease. Should I make myself scarce? No. His response was immediate. Your presence is essential to the narrative we're creating. And what narrative is that? His eyes met hers, intense and unwavering. That you are my chosen, under my protection, untouchable. The words sent an unexpected shiver through her. Court dinner that evening was an elaborate affair with representatives from 3 territories seated according to complex protocols. Arya found herself placed at Thorn's right, a position of honor that drew speculative glances from across the hall. Lady Serena Diana's mother studied Arya with calculating eyes that missed nothing. How interesting that King Thorn chooses an Omega from a fallen house for such an important ritual. My family's status doesn't diminish my capabilities, Arya replied, careful to keep her voice steady. Indeed. Serena's smile didn't reach her eyes. Capability matters little in matters of bloodline, however. The moon binding requires complementary ancestry. Does it not, Your Majesty? The ritual requires complementary spirits, Thorn corrected smoothly. Ancestry is a recent interpretation, not an ancient requirement. Serena's mouth tightened. Recent interpretations often prevent ancient mistakes, or perpetuate more recent ones. Thorn's tone remained pleasant, but Arya sensed the steel beneath it. Throughout the meal, Arya noticed Diana touching Thorn's arm. Whenever speaking, her fingers lingering on his sleeve, her laughter too bright when he made even minor comments. Each touch made something twist painfully in Arya's chest, a sensation she refused to acknowledge as jealousy. She told herself it didn't matter. Thorn's personal affairs were none of her concern. They had an arrangement, nothing more. Yet every time Diana leaned close to him, something primal and possessive clawed at Arya's insides. When Diana's hand brushed Thorn's for the 3rd time, Arya found herself staring fixedly at her plate. Appetite vanished. She sensed rather than saw Thorn glance her way, his attention like a physical touch against her skin. Later, as musicians played for the gathering, Lady Diana approached Arya directly. You must feel terribly out of place, she began, false sympathy dripping from every word. Court politics are so complex, especially for someone of your background. I manage. Of course you do. Diana's smile was razor sharp. For now, but the ritual approaches in history suggests your position is tenuous at best. History can be misleading or instructive. Diana leaned closer, lowering her voice. 3 white Omegas have come before you under Thorn's reign. None survived the ceremony. Ask yourself why he continues this pattern. Before Arya could respond, a shadow fell over them. Thorn stood there, his expression carefully neutral, but his eyes cold as he regarded Diana. Lady Diana, I believe your mother requires your presence. Diana straightened composure perfect once more. Your Majesty, we were just becoming acquainted. So I observed. His voice remained level, but Arya sensed his anger through their newly formed connection. After Diana departed, Thorn guided Arya toward a quieter corner of the hall. What did she say to you? She mentioned previous Omegas, said none survived the ceremony. His jaw tightened. Diana plays games with partial truths. The Omegas disappeared after the ceremony, yes, but not by my hand. She implied otherwise. Of course she did. Bitterness tinged his words. The failure served certain interests, as we discussed. Arya studied his face, searching for deception and finding only contained fury. You believe your uncle arranged their disappearances. I suspect but cannot yet prove. His gaze swept the hall where Lord Marcus conversed with several elders, which is why your safety requires constant vigilance. A servant approached, bowing low. Your Majesty, Lord Caleb requests your presence regarding urgent border matters. Thorn nodded, then turned back to Arya. Will you be all right alone? I'm surrounded by hundreds of people, hardly alone. His expression remained serious, few of whom wish you success. I've survived hostile environments before. Nevertheless, he signaled to Riley, who appeared within moments. Stay with Riley. I won't be long. As Thorn departed, Arya noticed Lord Marcus watching the exchange with evident interest. When their eyes met across the hall, he raised his goblet in mock salute. Riley guided Arya toward the refreshment tables. Best to keep moving. Standing still makes you an easier target for unpleasant conversations. Like the one approaching now, Arya murmured as Marcus changed course to intercept them. Lord Marcus, Riley bowed respectfully, but positioned herself slightly between him and Arya. Attending to our special guest, I see. Marcus smiled at Riley, then focused on Arya. How are the preparations progressing? My nephew seems quite invested in your success. Training goes well, Arya answered noncommittally. Excellent, though one wonders why he bothers given past outcomes. Marcus swirled the wine in his goblet thoughtfully. The moon-binding ritual serves the pack regardless of individual survival. Arya felt ice travel down her spine. You speak as if death is an expected outcome. Death, no. His laugh held no warmth. Merely transition. Great power requires great sacrifice. Surely my nephew explained this. He explained many things, but perhaps not all. Marcus stepped closer, lowering his voice. Has he told you why he watched you for years before bringing you here? Has he shared the true nature of his interest? Arya kept her expression neutral despite her racing heart. I'm sure His Majesty has his reasons. Indeed, just as your stepmother had hers when she arranged your sale. Marcus's eyes gleamed with satisfaction at her surprise. Oh yes, I know Eleanor quite well. We share certain philosophies regarding pack governance. A piece clicked into place. You helped her imprison my father. I facilitated an appropriate response to treasonous activities. His smile never wavered. Just as I facilitate appropriate outcomes for rituals that threaten established order. Are you threatening me? Merely offering perspective. He glanced toward where Thorn had disappeared. My nephew plays a dangerous game using you as his pawn. When the time comes, remember who truly controls this board. With that, he departed, leaving Arya shaken. Don't let him rattle you, Riley murmured. It's what he wants. He practically admitted to sabotaging the previous rituals. Words carefully chosen to imply without exposing himself. Riley guided Arya toward the terrace doors. Fresh air might help. The night air carried the scent of pine and distant snow, a welcome relief from the stifling atmosphere inside. Arya leaned against the stone balustrade, mind racing. Riley, what happened to the previous Omegas? Riley hesitated, glancing around to ensure their privacy. The first was found dead the morning after the ceremony. They called it suicide. The second disappeared during the celebrations following the ritual. The third, she swallowed hard. The third was my sister. She vanished from her chambers after completing the ritual successfully. Arya stared at her, understanding dawning. That's why you're helping me. You don't believe they failed. I know they didn't, especially Elise. Riley's voice cracked slightly. She wrote to me the night of the ceremony, excited that she and King Thorn had completed the ritual perfectly. By morning, her rooms were empty, the window open. They claimed she fled from the pressure of court life. But you don't believe that. Elise would never have left without saying goodbye, and she certainly wouldn't have left this. Riley pulled a small pendant from beneath her dress. Our mother's moonstone. Elise wore it always for protection. I found it under her bed after they declared her gone. Have you told Thorn? He conducted his own investigation, but evidence was scarce. Riley tucked the pendant away. Since then, he's been more cautious. Your training is more intensive than previous Omegas received. Your quarters more secure. Yet Marcus still speaks confidently of failure. Because he controls elements we haven't yet identified. Riley's expression hardened, which is why you must never be alone, especially as the ritual approaches. The remainder of the evening passed in tense vigilance. When Thorn finally returned, Arya felt relief wash over her, surprising in its intensity. They walked back to their chambers in silence, the weight of unspoken concerns filling the space between them. At her door, Thorn finally spoke. Something's troubling you. Marcus made threats, veiled but unmistakable. Thorn's expression darkened. Tell me everything. Inside her chambers, Arya recounted the conversation, including Marcus's connection to her stepmother. Thorn listened without interruption, his anger evident only in the tightness around his eyes. He grows bolder, Thorn said when she finished, which means he feels confident in his plans. He mentioned my stepmother arranged my sale specifically. Arya paced near the fire. This wasn't random, Thorn. They targeted me for a reason. Most likely because of who your father was. His territories bordered several powerful pacts. With him imprisoned and you eliminated, Eleanor consolidates considerable power. Working with your uncle. So it appears. Thorn ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of frustration. This accelerates our timeline. We need to advance to the final phase of training. Spiritual harmony. Arya remembered his earlier explanation. What does that entail? Soul bonding, temporary for the ritual only. He met her gaze directly. It requires complete openness between us. No barriers. Arya tensed. That sounds invasive. It can be if forced. Done properly with consent and preparation, it's more like sharing breathing space. Your thoughts remain your own, but your spirit recognizes mine as compatible, trustworthy. And if we can't achieve this harmony, then the ritual will fail, and Marcus wins. The truth hung heavy between them. Whatever game Marcus played, failure meant danger not just for Arya, but for Thorn's vision of a more balanced pack structure, possibly for Thorn himself. When do we begin? Tomorrow. Tonight rest. His expression softened slightly. And know that my protection extends beyond the ritual, Arya. I made you a promise regarding your father. I intend to keep it regardless of Marcus's schemes. Something warm unfurled in her chest at his words. She had lived so long without allies that the concept of genuine support felt almost foreign, dangerous to accept yet increasingly difficult to reject. After Thorn departed for his adjoining chambers, Arya stood at the window watching moonlight silver the mountains. Escape still beckoned a path she could take if she chose. Yet for the first time since arriving, another possibility competed for consideration. Staying, fighting, perhaps even winning. Dawn arrived with unexpected noise. Shouting in the distance, running footsteps in the corridor outside. Before Arya could investigate, Riley burst through the door, her face pale. There's been an attack, near the northern border. What kind of attack? They're saying rogue wolves from another territory. 3 guards killed. Riley began gathering clothes with shaking hands. King Thorn rides out immediately with a contingent. He requests you join the morning council in his absence. Why would he want me there? To observe, to be seen. Riley helped her dress quickly, to ensure no one forgets your position while he's gone. The council chamber buzzed with tension when Arya entered. Lord Caleb presided from Thorn's right-hand position, while Marcus sat opposite, his expression grim, but his eyes calculating. Lady Diana and her mother were also present, along with several territory representatives. Ah, the King's Omega joins us. Marcus's tone made the title sound like an insult. though I'm unsure what insights she brings to military matters. His Majesty requested her presence, Caleb stated flatly. That should be sufficient for all concerned. Arya took the seat indicated feeling distinctly out of place among these power players. She focused on observing, gathering intelligence as the council discussed the attack. The timing is suspicious, Caleb noted. 3 days before full moon preparations begin. Raiders often use moon cycles to plan attacks, Lady Serena countered. The connection may be coincidental. 4 dead guards suggests organization, not random raiding, another counselor argued. Has anyone claimed responsibility? Arya asked, drawing surprised glances. Caleb answered, not yet. King Thorn will investigate personally. Leaving the castle somewhat vulnerable during his absence, Marcus added smoothly. Something in his tone raised Arya's suspicions. The attack's timing was too convenient, pulling Thorn away just as ritual preparations intensified. She caught Riley's eye across the room, noting her similar concern. The council continued for hours discussing border patrols and security measures. Throughout, Arya noted the subtle power dynamics, how Marcus positioned himself as the voice of traditional values while Caleb represented Thorn's progressive approach. The divide was clear, with council members aligning accordingly. As the meeting adjourned, Arya overheard Diana speaking with her mother. This delay might work in our favor. The ritual timeline becomes compressed. Less time for proper preparation, Serena agreed. More room for error. Arya slipped away before they noticed her, listening, her unease growing. Back in her chambers, Riley brought lunch and news. The king's party reached the border. They're tracking the attackers into the mountains. When will they return? Tomorrow at earliest. The day after at latest. Riley hesitated. There's more. Lord Marcus has assumed oversight of ritual preparations in the king's absence. Arya's stomach dropped. He can't alter the ceremony, can he? Not fundamentally, but he can control access to sacred spaces, determine who assists. Riley lowered her voice. He's restricted access to the ritual chamber to essential personnel only, meaning his trusted followers. We need to continue training despite Thorn's absence. Arya made the decision quickly. Can you help me access the library? I need to learn everything possible about the spiritual harmony component. That night, Arya pored over ancient texts, struggling with translations of ritual instructions. Riley brought dinner to the library along with a visitor Arya hadn't expected. Lord Caleb. She straightened in surprise. Don't look so alarmed. He closed the door behind him. I come as an ally, however unlikely that may seem. You've given me little reason to consider you such. My loyalty is to the crown and pack. My public face must reflect appropriate skepticism of innovations. He glanced at the text spread before her. However, I share His Majesty's vision for a more balanced future. Riley nodded confirmation. Lord Caleb was my sister's friend. He's been helping investigate her disappearance. With limited success. Bitterness tinged his voice. Marcus covers his tracks well. Arya studied him, extending her newly developed senses to gauge his sincerity. She detected no deception, only controlled urgency. Why come to me now? Because Marcus moves ahead of schedule. The attack was almost certainly orchestrated to remove Thorn temporarily. Caleb lowered his voice further. I believe he plans to modify the ritual chamber before Thorn returns. Modify how Bazo, the chamber contains ancient markings that guide the energy flow between Alpha and Omega. Altering even one symbol could redirect that flow destructively. He would risk Thorn's life as well. The risk primarily falls to the Omega. The Alpha's greater physical strength usually allows survival, albeit weakened. Caleb's expression darkened, creating opportunity for a tragic accident during Thorn's vulnerable recovery. The pieces aligned with horrifying clarity. We need to access that chamber before Marcus makes changes. Hence my presence. Caleb produced a small iron key. This opens the lower passage to the ritual space. Marcus believes all copies are accounted for. When Quantum, tonight after midnight, Riley will create a diversion to occupy the guards Marcus has posted. He turned to leave, then paused. Thorn believes in you more than you realize, Omega. Don't prove him wrong. Hours later, Arya followed Riley through deserted corridors deep beneath the castle. The air grew colder, tinged with ancient magic that made her wolf stir restlessly beneath her skin. Riley will signal when the path is clear, Caleb whispered as they reached a narrow stone staircase. Once inside, we have perhaps 20 minutes before guards return. The diversion came in the form of kitchen fires that drew attention from all quarters. As guards rushed to respond, Caleb unlocked an ancient door carved with lunar symbols. The ritual chamber took Arya's breath away. Circular with a dome ceiling open to the sky above. Moonlight filtered down, illuminating concentric circles carved into the stone floor. Symbols lined each circle, some familiar from Thorne's books, others entirely unknown. There, Tamain, Caleb pointed to freshly scratched marks near the central circle. Already altered. Arya knelt to examine the changes. Can they be restored? Not perfectly, but enough to prevent catastrophic imbalance. Caleb produced a small chisel and began carefully working on the stone. While he worked, Arya studied the chamber, absorbing its ancient power. At the center stood two stone pedestals, positioned so those standing upon them would face each other beneath the open dome. The placement seemed deliberate, allowing moonlight to touch both participants equally during the ceremony. A sudden noise from the corridor outside froze them both. Guards returning early, Caleb hissed. Hide. Arya ducked behind a stone column as the heavy door swung open. But instead of guards, Lord Marcus entered, followed by Lady Diana. Progress, she asked, voice echoing in the chamber. Nearly complete. Marcus approached the central circle, frowning at the partially restored symbols. Someone's been here. They scrambled to hiding spots as Marcus investigated, his expression darkening. Caleb, he snarled. Only he would know about these markings. Does it matter? Can you still complete the changes? Yes, but we must accelerate the timeline. Marcus paced the circle. The king returns tomorrow. The ritual cannot wait for full moon. That violates tradition, Diana protested. Tradition means nothing if Thorne succeeds in altering pack hierarchy. Marcus's voice hardened. Your mother secures the Northern Alliance as we speak. All pieces align except this ritual. And the Omega will not survive a premature ceremony, especially with modified energy flows. His smile was cold, tragic but necessary. And Thorne will be weakened enough that challenge becomes possible. Marcus turned to her. Your opportunity arrives sooner than expected. Be ready. After they departed, Arya and Caleb emerged from hiding, faces grim. We must warn Thorne, she whispered. Messages are being intercepted. Caleb worked frantically to restore more symbols. We must prepare for ceremony without him. How I haven't completed the spiritual harmony training. Then you must learn quickly. Caleb's eyes met hers. Tonight. Back in her chambers, Arya found Riley waiting with unexpected news. The king's party has been delayed by landslides in the northern pass. Marcus announces the ceremony must proceed tomorrow night due to astrological imperatives. Convenient timing. Arya paced anxiously. Can we delay? Not without exposing our knowledge of Marcus's plans. Caleb had followed them back. We need another approach. A memory surfaced from Arya's midnight conversation with Thorne. Something about the original ritual requiring partners of equal standing. The books, she said suddenly. Thorne showed me texts about the original ceremony. Equal partners throughout, not hierarchical. The oldest scrolls are in the restricted archives, Riley said. Which I can access, Caleb added. What are you thinking? If we can't stop the ceremony, we follow the original form. Equal positioning might offset the modified symbols. Risky, Caleb warned. Without proper spiritual preparation? I don't see alternatives. Arya squared her shoulders. Bring the texts. I'll learn what I can before tomorrow. Night deepened as Arya studied ancient ceremony descriptions, committing positions and incantations to memory. The spiritual harmony component remained most troubling without Thorne to guide her. How could she achieve soul recognition with someone absent? Exhaustion finally claimed her near dawn. She dreamed of running through moonlit forests, wolves flanking her on all sides. Not pursuing, but accompanying. Pack. Family. At the lead ran a massive black wolf, its eyes finding hers across the distance. Thorne. Even in dreams, his presence resonated with something deep inside her. She woke with a startled gasp, heart pounding. Something had shifted during sleep, a connection forming without conscious effort. She could sense Thorne now distant but distinct, moving steadily closer to the castle. Returning but not soon enough. Riley arrived with breakfast in confirmation of their fears. Marcus announces ceremony preparations for tonight. Thorn's party still half a day's ride away. Then we proceed without him. Arya's resolve hardened. Prepare whatever traditional Omega garments would be appropriate. I'll face this as expected. There's more. Riley hesitated. Lady Diana suggests your stepmother arrives within hours to witness the ceremony. Shock coursed through Arya. Eleanor comes here, now, apparently at Marcus's invitation, a gesture of territorial goodwill. The pieces aligned with crushing clarity. Eleanor would witness Arya's failure firsthand, perhaps even participate in whatever fate awaited afterward. The elegant completion of the scheme that began with her father's imprisonment. Rage burned through fear, igniting determination Arya hadn't known she possessed. She would not become another disappeared Omega, another step in Marcus's path to power. Whatever happened tonight, she would face it standing, not kneeling. Tell Caleb to continue restoring symbols as much as possible, she instructed Riley, and find me everything about my father's current location. If I survive tonight, I want answers immediately. As preparations continued throughout the day, Arya focused on the mental connection she'd glimpsed in dreams. Closing her eyes, she reached toward that distant awareness of Thorn, willing him to sense her urgency, her warning. Whether he received it, she couldn't tell, but the effort strengthened something inside her. By evening, the castle buzzed with anticipation. Ritual participants gathered in the great hall where Marcus presided in ceremonial robes. Arya entered wearing traditional white, her spine straight, despite the weight of stairs. The White Omega prepares for her destiny, Marcus announced to assembled witnesses. Tonight under stars rather than full moon, we honor ancient traditions with necessary adaptations. Arya met his gaze steadily, refusing to show fear. Across the hall, she spotted a familiar figure entering with an entourage. Eleanor, elegant and cold as ever, her smile triumphant as their eyes met. The circle was complete. Those who had conspired against her father now gathered to witness her fall. Lady Diana stood with her mother, awaiting Thorn's expected weakening. Marcus ready to seize control through ancient manipulation. As ceremonial drums began, Arya felt the first tendrils of panic threatening her resolve. She closed her eyes briefly, reaching once more along that tenuous connection to Thorn. And this time, startlingly, she felt response. Distant but unmistakable. Awareness. Concern. Determination. He was coming. But would he arrive in time? The procession to the ritual chamber began, torchlight, illuminating stone passages as Arya walked toward whatever fate awaited. Behind her, the conspirators followed their victory, seemingly assured. Ahead, the chamber door stood open, moonlight spilling from the opening above. Riley squeezed her hand briefly as they reached the threshold. Remember the original positions, she whispered. Equal standing. Arya stepped into the chamber alone, her white garments glowing in the silvery light. The modified symbols pulsed subtly along the stone circles, energy already gathering for the ceremony to come. At the chamber's center, Marcus had placed a low cushion where the Omega was expected to kneel. Arya moved past it to stand directly on the central stone where equals would face each other in the original ritual. Behind her, she heard murmurs of disapproval as Marcus entered. The Omega kneels to receive blessing, he instructed sharply. Arya turned to face him, voice clear in the dome space. The original ritual required partners of equal standing. I stand as tradition truly demands. Anger flashed across Marcus's face. You overstep. I reclaim proper position. Arya held her ground as guests filed into the chamber's outer ring. Where is King Thorn? The Alpha must be present. Circumstances require adaptation, Marcus replied smoothly, though rage simmered beneath his composed exterior. As ritual master, I will channel the Alpha energy in his regrettable absence. This deviation confirmed Arya's worst fears. Without Thorn's direct participation, the modified symbols would direct all destructive energy toward her alone. Eleanor stepped forward from the crowd, her smile venomous. Perhaps the Omega requires guidance from family. She approached Arya, voice lowering. Kneel as instructed, girl, or what befell your father will seem merciful compared to your fate. Arya felt something snap inside her, a chain breaking after years of constraint. Her wolf surged forward, not taking over, but merging, lending strength and certainty. I am not yours to command, her voice carried throughout the chamber. Not anymore. The drums intensified as Marcus moved to the ceremonial position opposite Arya, raising his arms to begin the ritual. Energy swirled visibly around the outermost circle, rippling toward the center where they stood. "The ceremony begins," Marcus intoned. "May the worthy survive and the unworthy fall." As the first wave of energy reached Arya, pain seared through her body. The modified symbols redirected power destructively, exactly as Caleb had warned. She gritted her teeth, maintaining her position despite the burning sensation climbing her legs. Marcus smiled, satisfaction evident as he watched her struggle. "Perhaps kneeling would ease your discomfort." Arya met his gaze defiantly. "I stand as an equal, as was always intended." The second wave hit harder, bringing Arya to one knee despite her determination. Around the chamber, spectators watched with varying expressions: terror, excitement, smug anticipation. Eleanor stepped closer, eager to witness her stepdaughter's defeat. "Your father knelt too eventually," she whispered. Broken by truth he couldn't accept. "What truth?" Arya gasped through pain. "That weakness cannot lead. That Omegas exist to serve, not to stand equal." Something clicked in Arya's mind, connections forming through agony. This wasn't just about territory or power. This was ideology, the belief that hierarchy must be maintained at all costs. The third energy wave approached, swirling ominously around the inner circle. This would be the killing stroke designed to shatter an Omega's spirit completely. Arya struggled to her feet, refusing to meet death on her knees. Just as the energy crested, the chamber door burst open with explosive force. Silhouetted against torchlight, Thorn stood panting, eyes blazing alpha red with fury. "Stop!" The command vibrated with alpha power, freezing everyone in place. Thorn strode into the chamber, power radiating from him in palpable waves. "You dare perform this ritual in my absence." Marcus recovered quickly. "Astrological necessity. Nephew, we could not delay." "You could not wait for rightful authority." Thorn moved swiftly to the central circle, taking position opposite Arya. Their eyes met across the space, relief and determination flowing between them. The Alpha arrives to complete the ceremony properly. The energy that had been building destructively suddenly shifted, responding to Thorn's presence. The connection Arya had sensed in dreams surged to life between them, creating a balanced circuit where power could flow naturally. Marcus stepped back, rage and calculation warring on his face. "The modified symbols are already activated. Even you cannot survive their full force now." "Perhaps not alone." Thorn extended his hands toward Arya, palms up in offering rather than demand. "But we stand as equals, as tradition truly intended." Understanding flowed between them without words. Arya placed her palms against his, completing the connection. Energy surged through them, both painful, but now balance, flowing between Alpha and Omega in the pattern originally designed. "Impossible," Marcus hissed. "The modification should prevent balance." But the connection deepened with each passing moment. Arya felt Thorn's essence reaching toward hers, not invasive, not dominating, but welcoming, equal. Their minds touched at the edges, then began to blend, creating something greater than either alone. Around them, the chamber filled with light as the energy circuit completed, flowing through properly restored symbols that Caleb had managed to fix. The spiritual harmony they hadn't had time to practice formed naturally, instinctively, as though their souls recognized each other across ancient divides. With a sudden surge, the energy peaked, then flowed outward in expanding rings, washing over the assembled witnesses. Where it touched, truth became visible to all. Marcus's modified symbols glowed red against the floor, his sabotage exposed. Eleanor's connection to the previous Omegas' disappearances manifested as shadowy lines between her and Marcus. Most shocking to the assembly, the energy revealed Marcus himself not as pure Alpha, but as an Omega who had suppressed his true nature through forbidden magics, hiding behind Alpha appearance to maintain his position. "Deception," someone shouted. "False Alpha." Chaos erupted as guards moved to restrain both Marcus and Eleanor. But Arya and Thorn remained locked in their connected state, the ritual completing despite the disruption around them. In that perfect harmony, Thorn's thoughts flowed to Arya with complete transparency. She saw why he had chosen her years ago when he first witnessed her courage against Eleanor's cruelty. She felt his admiration, his respect, his growing affection, despite his attempts to remain detached. And she knew he sensed her emotions in return, her distrust transforming to reluctant alliance, then to something deeper she hadn't dared name. As the energy began to fade, Thorn spoke softly, words meant only for her. "You stand unbroken, as I always knew you would." The ritual, complete the chamber, gradually cleared of chaotic energy. Guards led Marcus and Eleanor away, their conspiracy exposed beyond denial. Lady Diana and her mother retreated in hasty disgrace, alliance plans shattered. Arya swayed on her feet, exhaustion claiming her now that danger had passed. Thorn caught her before she could fall, his arms steady around her. "You saved yourself," he murmured as he lifted her. "I merely arrived in time to witness your strength." As consciousness faded, Arya felt something settle into place between them. Not ownership, not dominance, but connection freely given and received. For the first time since entering Cascade Castle, she slept without fear, knowing that whatever came next, she would face it, standing never again kneeling to those who demanded submission without earning trust. The White Omega had not only survived, she had transformed the very ritual meant to destroy her, beginning changes that would ripple through Pact society for generations to come. And somewhere in the castle depths, already planning the challenges that would come with dawn, Thorn watched over her, his chosen equal in the battles to come. Consciousness returned to Arya slowly, like swimming up from deep waters. Sunlight warmed her face, filtering through gossamer curtains that stirred in a gentle mountain breeze. For a disorienting moment, she couldn't remember where she was or how she had arrived there. Then the memories flooded back, the ritual, Marcus's betrayal, Thorn's arrival, and the unexpected harmony that had formed between them. She sat up carefully, surprised to find herself not in her usual chamber, but in a larger room she hadn't seen before. Sunlight revealed rich tapestries depicting ancient wolf legends, comfortable furnishings, and wide windows overlooking the forested mountains beyond. The king's personal quarters, she realized with the start. A soft knock preceded Riley entering with a tray of food and fresh clothing. "You're awake," relief colored her voice. "How do you feel?" "Like I survived something I shouldn't have." Arya accepted the steaming cup Riley offered. "How long was I unconscious?" "Just overnight. The ritual took tremendous energy, but your recovery has been remarkably swift." Riley set down the tray. "The king said that's further proof of your strength." "Where is he?" "Council chambers. Much has happened since last night." Riley's expression turned serious. "Lord Marcus and your stepmother remain under guard. Their exposed conspiracy has thrown the territories into turmoil." Arya sipped the fragrant tea, trying to process this new reality. "And Lady Diana departed with her mother before dawn, claiming ignorance of Marcus's schemes." Riley snorted softly. "Few believe them, but the Silver Crest territory is too powerful to accuse without irrefutable evidence, which we lack." For now, Riley helped Arya stand, steadying her when she swayed slightly. "The king requests your presence in council once you're able. There are decisions to be made regarding the conspirators." "And regarding me?" Arya asked, voicing the uncertainty that lingered despite their ritual success. "The ceremony is complete, our arrangement fulfilled." Something knowing flickered in Riley's eyes. "Is that how you see it?" Arya turned away, unprepared to examine the emotions swirling beneath her practical concerns. The ritual had exposed more than just Marcus's deception. The connection formed with Thorn had revealed feelings on both sides that neither had fully acknowledged. After bathing and changing into the clothes Riley provided, finer than her previous garments in deep blue silk embroidered with silver, Arya made her way to the council chambers. Guards nodded respectfully as she passed, a subtle but significant change from their previous wariness. Outside the massive oak doors, she paused, hearing raised voices within. Thorn's distinctive baritone remained measured, but tension underscored his words. "The evidence speaks for itself. 3 Omegas disappeared under Marcus's ceremonial oversight. His modified symbols would have claimed a 4th if not intercepted." "Symbols can be interpreted many ways," an elder counselor responded, "and Lord Marcus's service spans decades." "Service built on deception," Thorn countered. "He concealed his true nature through forbidden practices, violating our most sacred laws. An Omega serving as ritual master is unprecedented, yes," another voice conceded, "but his effectiveness cannot be denied. Our territory has prospered." "At what cost?" Thorn's voice hardened. "How many have we sacrificed to maintain a hierarchy that serves only those already in power?" The conversation stilled as Arya entered, all eyes turning toward her. Thorn stood at the head of a long table, his presence commanding even without his crown. Beside him, Caleb managed to appear simultaneously exhausted and triumphant. Across the table sat the Elder Council, their expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. "The White Omega joins us," announced one elder, her tone making it unclear whether this was welcome or not. "Lady Arya," Thorn corrected firmly, "whose courage exposed a conspiracy that threatened not just her life, but the future of our pack." He gestured to the empty seat at his right hand, the position of highest honor. Arya moved toward it with measured steps, conscious of the statement this placement made to the assembled council. "We were discussing appropriate consequences for Lord Marcus," Caleb explained as she sat, "and by extension your stepmother, Eleanor. Their guilt is not in question," Thorn added. "The ritual energy revealed truths that cannot be denied. However, the extent of their punishment remains undecided." Arya felt the weight of expectation. As the wrong party, her input would influence the council's decision. She chose her words carefully. "What do our laws prescribe for conspiracy, identity, deception, and attempted murder?" "Traditionally execution," an elder counselor answered, "though exile has been substituted in recent generations." "And for the imprisonment of a legitimate pack leader?" Arya asked, thinking of her father. "What does justice demand there?" The council shifted uncomfortably. One silver-haired elder cleared his throat. "If you speak of your father, the charges against him were formally registered. The process, while perhaps expedited, followed legal requirements. Based on false evidence provided by conspirators," Arya countered, "the same ones whose other crimes you now acknowledge." Thorn intervened before tensions could escalate further. "Lord Caleb has already dispatched investigators to the coastal territories. If your father lives, Lady Arya, we will find him." The promise settled something in her chest, a hope she had scarcely allowed herself to nurture. She inclined her head in acknowledgement. "Until then, Marcus and Eleanor remain our immediate concern," Thorn continued. "Their actions threaten not just individuals, but the very foundations of our society." "By exposing an Omega who pretended to be Alpha," one counselor scoffed, "the deception is distasteful but hardly revolutionary." "By manipulating sacred rituals to maintain an artificial hierarchy," Thorn corrected sharply. "By eliminating those who might challenge that hierarchy through successful Alpha-Omega partnership. You suggest fundamental changes into our social order," the elder counselor observed. "Many will resist." "Many benefited from the previous imbalance," Thorn agreed. "Change always faces resistance." Arya studied the faces around the table, reading the political undercurrents. Some counselors appeared thoughtful, others alarmed. Thorn was using Marcus's exposure to advance broader reforms that would reshape Wolf society beyond Cascade territory. "What do you propose, Your Majesty?" asked one of the younger counselors. "Equal standing for Omegas in all matters of governance," Thorn replied without hesitation. "Recognition of complementary strengths rather than hierarchical domination. Beginning with this council." Murmurs of protest rose immediately. "Tradition cannot be overturned on a whim. The territories would never accept such radical change. The natural order exists for a reason." Arya watched Thorn absorb their resistance calmly, like a mountain unmoved by wind. He had clearly anticipated this reaction, perhaps had faced it many times before. "The natural order," he repeated thoughtfully, "was revealed last night when the ritual functioned as originally intended, with Alpha and Omega in equal partnership, creating harmony rather than dominance. What you call tradition is merely the accumulation of manipulations designed to consolidate power." "Pretty words," dismissed an elder, "but impractical. Omegas lack the temperament for leadership." "Do they?" Thorn's gaze shifted meaningfully to Arya. Lady Arya faced conspiracy assassination attempts and ritual sabotage with courage many Alphas would envy. She stood her ground when kneeling would have been easier. "Tell me what temperament better suits leadership." The question hung in the air, unanswered but impactful. Arya felt a strange mixture of pride and discomfort at being positioned as an example. She hadn't sought to become a symbol yet. Circumstances had thrust her into precisely that role. "The White Omega's qualities are not in question," conceded one counselor, reluctantly. "But one exception cannot overturn centuries of established order." "Unless that order was built on deliberate suppression," Caleb interjected. Records recovered from Marcus's quarters suggest systematic elimination of Omegas, who demonstrated leadership potential. Not just the ritual participants, but dozens more across generations. Shock rippled through the council. Even the most conservative members appeared disturbed by this revelation. If true, this changes matters significantly, admitted the senior counselor. Evidence must be examined thoroughly. And while that examination proceeds, Thorne pressed, Marcus and Eleanor remain in custody, and we begin implementing balanced representation in all pack governance. Starting with this council, Arya added, finding her voice, equal numbers of Alpha, Beta, and Omega representatives from each territory. Surprisingly, several counselors nodded thoughtfully at this concrete proposal. The remainder looked unhappy, but less openly hostile than minutes earlier. We will recess to consider these matters, announced the senior counselor, and reconvene tomorrow with our response to both the punishment question and the broader governance proposals. As the council members filed out, Thorne remained seated, his expression revealing nothing of his thoughts. Once the doors closed, leaving only Arya, Thorne, and Caleb in the chamber, his shoulders relaxed marginally. You did well, he told Arya. Better than many seasoned politicians. I spoke from conviction, she replied. But will it matter? They seemed resistant. Less than expected, Caleb observed. Marcus's exposure creates opportunity. Many who privately question the hierarchy remain silent out of fear. That fear diminishes with each passing hour. Thorne rose, stretching subtly as though releasing accumulated tension. Tonight we announce the ritual's success to the territories, a symbolic confirmation of Cascade's stability despite recent turmoil. And tomorrow we face the council's decision regarding Marcus and Eleanor, Caleb added. And my father, Arya reminded them, I want to know everything your investigators discover. You will. Thorne's gaze softened when it met hers. I made you a promise. I intend to keep it. Something passed between them, then an echo of the connection formed during the ritual. Though less intense than that spiritual joining, Arya could still sense his sincerity, his determination to honor his word. Rest today, Thorne suggested. Tonight's announcement requires your presence, but until then, recover your strength. Arya nodded, suddenly aware of lingering fatigue beneath her composure. As she left the council chamber, she noticed Thorne and Caleb exchanging meaningful glances, clearly continuing discussions they preferred to have privately. Despite their apparent alliance, she remained outside their innermost circle, a reality that stung more than she cared to admit. Back in her chambers, her original rooms, not Thorne's, where she had awakened, Arya found Riley arranging formal garments for the evening ceremony. The king's announcement ceremony is traditionally elaborate, Riley explained as she displayed a gown of silver and midnight blue. As White Omega, you'll stand beside him, visible to all territories. Not White Omega anymore, Arya corrected. Just Arya. Riley's smile was gentle. Names and titles matter greatly in court politics. Tonight you'll be introduced by your full lineage, for the first time Lady Arya, daughter of Lord Tiernan, legitimate heir to the coastal territories. The acknowledgement of her heritage so long denied by Eleanor's machinations struck Arya with unexpected force. Thorne arranged this. He insists on proper recognition. Riley smoothed the gown reverently. Many see it as the first step toward restoration of your father's lands. The implication hung between them, unspoken but clear. If Arya's father lived and was freed, the coastal territories currently controlled by Eleanor would revert to him or to Arya as his heir. A significant shift in territorial power with implications far beyond her personal justice. No wonder the council hesitates, Arya murmured. Thorne doesn't simply propose philosophical changes. He redraws territorial boundaries. He restores rightful leadership, Riley corrected. Justice may inconvenience those who benefited from its absence. Throughout the afternoon, Arya prepared for the evening ceremony, both physically and mentally. The ritual's aftermath had left her feeling strange, more confident in some ways, yet unsettled in others. The connection formed with the Thorne lingered like an echo, not invasive, but undeniably present. She could sense his general location in the castle, his broad emotional state, though specific thoughts remained private. As twilight approached, Riley helped her dress in the ceremonial gown, its elaborate embroidery depicting phases of the moon intertwined with wolf silhouettes. The symbolism wasn't subtle balance between lunar and wolf nature harmony, rather than dominance. You look like a queen, Riley observed softly as she secured silver combs in Arya's dark hair. I'm not. The denial came automatically. Riley's expression turned knowing. The ritual creates spiritual bonds that tradition often formalizes through marriage. The territories will expect announcement of such arrangements soon. Thorn made me no such offer, Arya replied stiffly, nor would I accept one made from political necessity rather than genuine choice. Are you certain it would be necessity rather than choice? Before Arya could respond, a knock announced Caleb's arrival to escort her to the ceremony. The first minister looked uncharacteristically formal in ceremonial robes, his normally serious expression replaced by carefully neutral dignity. Lady Arya, he bowed slightly, the king awaits. The great hall had been transformed for the occasion with banners representing all allied territories hanging from ancient rafters. Representatives from each pack filled the space, their finery indicating the event's importance. At the far end, Thorn stood upon a raised dais resplendent in ceremonial attire that somehow enhanced rather than diminished his natural authority. When Arya entered, a hush fell over the assembly. Caleb guided her through the parted crowd toward the dais, where Thorn extended his hand to help her ascend the steps. As their fingers touched, the ritual connection flared briefly, warmth spreading up her arm. "Ready?" he asked softly. "As I'll ever be." His smile, brief but genuine, steadied her nerves. He turned to address the gathering, his voice carrying effortlessly to the farthest corners. "Representatives of the Allied territories, honored guest members of Cascade Pack, we gather to announce the successful completion of the moon-binding ritual, securing prosperity and strength for our lands for the decade to come." Formal applause greeted this statement, though Arya noticed varying degrees of enthusiasm throughout the crowd. "The ritual revealed truths long hidden," Thorn continued, his tone hardening slightly. "Conspiracy against the crown, manipulation of sacred ceremonies, and crimes against those who came before." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Lord Marcus, formerly trusted advisor and ritual master, stands exposed as an Omega who concealed his true nature through forbidden practices. His conspiracy with Eleanor of the coastal territories endangered not just this ritual, but the three preceding it. Gasps and exclamations erupted, particularly from those hearing these revelations for the first time. "Justice will be determined by council decision," Thorn announced. "But tonight we focus not on betrayal, but on success despite adversity." He turned slightly toward Arya, his gesture inviting her forward. The ritual connection hummed between them as she stepped to his side. Lady Arya, daughter of Lord Tiernan, legitimate heir to the coastal territories, demonstrated extraordinary courage and strength. Where others sought to use the ritual to reinforce hierarchy, she restored its original purpose, harmony between Alpha and Omega in equal partnership. The crowd's reaction was mixed, clear support from some quarters, thinly veiled disapproval from others. Arya stood straight, refusing to shrink beneath critical stares or blossom under approving ones. Her worth existed independent of their judgment, a realization both liberating and fortifying. "The success of this ritual opens a new chapter for our territories," Thorn declared, "one where ancient wisdom guides us toward balance rather than dominance, where Alpha, Beta, and Omega each contribute their unique strengths to governance." Now the reaction grew more pronounced, with visible discomfort among the more traditional representatives. Thorn acknowledged this with a slight nod. "Change comes gradually, but it comes nevertheless. The council deliberates on specific implementations, but the direction is clear. What was revealed cannot be hidden again." As Thorn concluded the formal announcement, Arya sensed movement near the hall's entrance. Guards stationed there stiffened to attention, then parted to admit a travel-worn group, led by a man whose appearance caused Arya's heart to nearly stop. Tall and broad-shouldered despite evident hardship, his once dark hair now streaked with silver, his face lined but his eyes clear and piercing. Lord Tiernan, her father, alive and present against all expectation. Arya swayed slightly, Thorn's hand steadying her elbow. The connection between them vibrated with her shock, her disbelief, her desperate hope. "How?" she whispered. "Caleb's investigators found him imprisoned in a remote stronghold," Thorn murmured. "I authorized immediate extraction while the council deliberated." Tiernan approached the dais slowly, his gaze never leaving his daughter's face. Around him the crowd parted, conversation hushed as the significance of his arrival registered. When he reached the steps, he bowed formally to Thorn, then straightened to look directly at Arya. "My daughter." His voice was rough with emotion. They said you were sold. I was. Arya struggled to maintain composure, but not owned. Something like pride flashed in his eyes. He extended his hand toward her, a gesture of both greeting and question. Without hesitation, Arya descended the steps and clasped his fingers, their similar features now obvious to all watching. The legitimate Lord of Coastal Territories returns, Thorne announced to the stunned assembly. Another truth revealed by justice. Diplomacy prevented him from directly accusing Eleanor of wrongful imprisonment, but the implication hung unmistakably in the air. The political landscape shifted visibly as territorial representatives reassessed alliances in light of this development. The remainder of the ceremony passed in a blur for Arya. Formal greetings, traditional blessings, ritual, sharing of ceremonial wine, she performed her role automatically. Her attention repeatedly drawn to her father, still scarcely believing his presence was real rather than imagined. It was late evening when formalities finally concluded, allowing privacy for family reunion. In a small chamber adjoining the Great Hall, Arya finally embraced her father properly, tears she had long suppressed, flowing freely. I thought you dead, she confessed against his shoulder. Eleanor said many things untrustworthy. Bitterness edged his voice. She imprisoned me when I discovered her correspondence with Marcus, planning territorial realignments that would have devastated our people. How did you survive? Loyal guards who remembered better days. Small kindnesses that accumulated over time. He held her at arm's length, studying her face. But you sold to the Wolf King himself. When I heard, I feared the worst. Thorne is not what Eleanor led us to believe, Arya said carefully. He bought me to prevent worse fates, not to possess. Tiernan's expression grew thoughtful. So I observed tonight. The ritual connection between you is evident to those who know the signs. Heat rose to Arya's cheeks. The connection served its purpose for the ceremony. Did it? Her father's smile held gentle skepticism. Such bonds rarely form without genuine compatibility. Before Arya could formulate a response, Thorne himself entered the chamber, having shed most of his ceremonial regalia. He acknowledged Tiernan with respectful inclination of his head. Lord Tiernan, I apologize for interrupting, but Council has reached decisions requiring immediate attention. Regarding Eleanor and Marcus, Arya asked. Among other matters, Thorne's expression revealed nothing specific. Your presence is requested, both of you. The council chamber appeared transformed from that morning's session. Additional chairs had been added, occupied by territorial representatives who normally would not participate in cascade governance. Arya recognized the deliberate inclusivity of this arrangement, Thorne implementing changes even before formal approval. Lord Marcus and Eleanor had been brought from their cells, standing under guard at the chamber center. Eleanor's normally perfect appearance had deteriorated during confinement, but her expression remained coldly defiant. Marcus looked diminished, somehow his deception exposed and his alpha facade no longer convincing. The senior counselor rose as Thorne entered with Arya and Tiernan. The council has reached unanimous decisions regarding the conspirators and subsequent governance adjustments. Proceed, Thorne directed, taking a seat. Regarding Lord Marcus and Lady Eleanor of Coastal Territories, evidence of conspiracy, ritual sabotage, illegal imprisonment, and multiple disappearances is deemed conclusive. The counselor's voice remained formal, despite the gravity of the charges. The traditional punishment of execution has been considered and rejected in favor of permanent exile beyond Allied territory boundaries. Murmurs of both approval and disappointment rippled through the chamber. Exile meant survival, but also complete severance from pack society, a devastating sentence for wolves whose identity was intrinsically tied to their pack. Regarding territorial governance, Lord Tiernan is formally recognized as legitimate leader of coastal territories, with all rights and privileges thereof restored. Tiernan inclined his head in acknowledgement, his expression carefully neutral, despite this personal victory. Regarding broader governance reforms, the counselor continued, revealing the most contentious decision. The council acknowledges the evidence of systematic suppression revealed by Marcus's records. We approve transitional implementation of balanced representation with equal voice for Alpha, Beta, and Omega members in all governing bodies. Shock rippled through the chamber. Even Thorne looked momentarily surprised at the scope of this approval, having clearly expected more resistance. The transitional period spans 5 years, the counselor clarified. after which permanent structures will be formalized based on observed effectiveness. A diplomatic compromise, but significant progress nevertheless. Arya sensed Thorne's careful restraint through their connection, his triumph contained behind regal composure. The council has one final determination, the senior counselor announced, regarding the ritual bond formed between King Thorne and Lady Arya. Arya tensed, uncertain what official interest the council might claim in what she considered a private matter. Tradition holds that such bonds, once formed, be formalized through marriage alliance, particularly when territorial interests align. The counselor's gaze moved between Thorne and Arya. However, in keeping with our commitment to reform, the council determines that such formalization must derive from mutual choice rather than obligation. Arya exhaled slowly, relief washing through her. Beside her, Thorne's posture relaxed marginally. The ritual bond remains a spiritual reality regardless of formal status, the counselor concluded. But its political expression rests with the participants themselves to be determined at their discretion. With formalities completed, guards led Marcus and Eleanor away to prepare for their exile journey. Arya watched her stepmother's departure with complicated emotions. Satisfaction at justice served yet a hollow feeling where vengeance might have resided. Eleanor had lost everything: position, power, reputation. Revenge seemed superfluous compared to such comprehensive downfall. As the council chamber emptied, Tiernan approached his daughter. "I must return to our territory soon. Our people have suffered under Eleanor's governance and require leadership." Of course, Arya had expected this, yet felt unexpectedly torn. After so long separated, immediate parting seemed cruel. Tiernan smiled gently, reading her expression. "You would be welcome to return with me. Your home awaits if you choose it." Home. The word evoked memories of coastal forests, familiar landscapes, childhood security long lost. Yet something held her back from immediate acceptance. "I need time," she admitted, "to consider options that recently seemed impossible. Options including Cascade." Tiernan's gaze drifted meaningfully toward Thorne, who conversed with counselors across the chamber. Perhaps. Arya wouldn't commit further, not while her own feelings remained unresolved. "Take the time you need." Tiernan squeezed her hand. "I'll remain through tomorrow's further deliberations before departing. We'll speak more before I leave." After her father departed, Arya found herself alone in the gradually emptying chamber. Thorne concluded his discussions and approached his expression thoughtful. "The council's decisions were more progressive than anticipated," he observed. "Marcus's exposed deception created opportunity," Arya replied, echoing Caleb's earlier assessment. "Fear of similar exposure probably motivated some conversions." Cynical but likely accurate. His smile held genuine warmth. "Your father seems well despite his ordeal." "Thanks to your intervention." Arya met his gaze directly. "Why did you authorize his rescue without council approval?" "It risked your political capital." "You asked about him. I promised to help." Thorne stated this simply, as though the reasoning were obvious. And justice delayed is justice denied. Something tightened in Arya's chest at his matter-of-fact explanation. "He's invited me to return to coastal territories with him." If this news affected Thorne, he concealed it well. "An understandable offer. Will you accept?" "I'm considering options." She studied his expression, searching for reaction. "The council mentioned our ritual bond. A spiritual connection, not a contractual obligation." Thorne maintained careful neutrality. "Your future remains your choice, as promised when you first arrived." "When I was purchased, you mean?" The words emerged more sharply than intended. "When you were freed from one cage only to find yourself in another of my making." Regret colored his voice, however well-intentioned. The honesty of this admission disarmed her prepared defenses. "You never treated me as property. I brought you here against your will, regardless of my motivations." Thorne stepped closer, close enough that she could sense the subtle connection between them, humming with unspoken emotion. "I would not compound that beginning by claiming any right to determine your future." "Even with this bond between us," Arya gestured vaguely, indicating the invisible connection they both felt, "especially because of it." His voice lowered, meant for her alone. "What exists between us has value only if freely chosen on both sides. I would rather sever it completely than maintain it through obligation or guilt." The sentiment resonated with unexpected force. Throughout her life, choice had been something others claimed on her behalf. Her stepmother, territorial politics, even well-meaning allies. Thorn offering genuine freedom, even at personal cost, represented something precious and rare. "I need time," she said finally, "to know my own mind apart from recent events. Take all the time you require." His acceptance held no reservation. "Your chambers remain yours for as long as you wish. Your status as honored ally ensures freedom of movement throughout territories." The conversation paused as servants entered to extinguish council chamber candles, a gentle reminder of the late hour. Thorn offered his arm to escort her back toward residential wings, a courtesy rather than presumption. "Tomorrow brings further council discussions on implementation details," he noted as they walked. "Your perspective would be valuable if you choose to attend." "I will." The decision came easily, her interest in governance reforms genuine despite personal uncertainty. At her chamber door they paused. The ritual connection between them seemed to intensify, and the quiet corridor awareness of each other heightened by proximity and privacy. "Rest well, Arya." Thorn's voice carried warmth that transcended formal courtesy. "And you?" He turned to leave, then hesitated. "Whatever path you choose, know that you've changed Cascade irreversibly. Your courage created possibilities where none existed before." The simple acknowledgement carried more weight than flowery declarations might have. Arya watched him depart, emotions tangled into knots she couldn't immediately unravel. Inside her chambers, Riley waited to assist with evening preparations, her expression curious but discreet. As she helped Arya from the ceremonial gown, she finally ventured a question. "Your father's return changes matters considerably." "It complicates an already complex situation," Arya agreed. "Will you return to coastal territories?" Arya sighed, sinking into a chair as Riley brushed out her hair. "I don't know. A month ago, nothing would have kept me from such an opportunity. Now, now there are considerations beyond family restoration. The reforms need advocates. Implementation will face resistance despite council approval." Riley's smile suggested she recognized this explanation as partial truth. "And personal considerations." Arya met her gaze in the mirror. "The ritual created connection neither of us anticipated. Yet neither seems willing to acknowledge its natural conclusion." "There is no foregone conclusion." Arya's tone sharpened slightly. "That's precisely what the council acknowledged today. Choice matters more than tradition." "Of course," Riley set down the brush. "Though some traditions endure because they recognize natural patterns, the ritual bond forms most strongly between compatible spirits." Later, alone in darkness, Arya stood at her chamber window, watching moonlight silver the mountains beyond. The same mountains that had seemed like prison walls when she first arrived now represented possibility rather than confinement. She extended her senses along the subtle connection formed during the ritual, feeling Thorn's presence in the castle. Not his specific thoughts or emotions, just his existence, like a star one navigates by without touching. He would never demand she stay, never use the bond to influence her decision. His gift to her was genuine freedom, perhaps the only person who had ever offered it without condition. Morning brought renewed activity throughout the castle. Territorial representatives prepared for council sessions. Servants bustled with arrangements, and guards maintained vigilant watch as governance discussions continued. Arya divided her time between council observation and private conversations with her father, rebuilding bridges across years of separation. Tiernan spoke of coastal recovery plans, restoration of traditional leadership councils, and reconnection with allied territories. His vision aligned remarkably with Thorn's reforms, suggesting compatible governance despite geographic separation. "You've been offered a place on Cascade's Transitional Council," he noted during one conversation. "An influential position." "How did you know that?" "Thorn consulted me before extending the offer." Tiernan smiled at her surprise. "Respecting both your independence and family connections. I haven't accepted yet, but you're considering it seriously." Her father's perception remained sharp despite years of imprisonment. "You found purpose here beyond survival." Arya couldn't deny this assessment. The reforms matter. Someone must ensure they're implemented properly, not just approved symbolically. Someone with first-hand experience of what happens when omegas are systemically suppressed. Tiernan nodded thoughtfully. "A compelling calling. But coastal territories need rebuilding too." "They do." He studied her face. Yet leadership takes many forms. Physical presence isn't always required for influence, particularly between allied territories with shared vision. The implication hung between them: she could serve both responsibilities depending on choices made. Choices increasingly clarifying in her mind as days passed. On the eve of Tyrannon's departure, Arya walked with her father through the castle gardens, savoring these moments of reconnection. "I've decided to accept the council position," she told him, "at least through the transitional implementation." "I suspected as much." His smile held pride rather than disappointment. "The work suits your strengths. And after implementation is secure, perhaps divided time between territories." She had considered this possibility extensively. Maintaining connection with home while building something new here. A diplomatic arrangement with personal benefits. Tiernan's knowing tone made her blush slightly. "Have you discussed this with Thorn?" "Not yet. Perhaps you should." Her father gestured subtly ahead where Thorn stood near a garden fountain, apparently deep in thought. "You arranged this." Arya recognized the setup immediately. "I merely suggested evening gardens for our walk. The king's presence is either coincidence or excellent staff coordination." Tiernan squeezed her shoulder affectionately. "I'll wait by the eastern gate to give you privacy." Before she could protest, her father had moved away, leaving her to approach Thorn alone. He looked up as she neared surprise, giving way to pleasure in his expression. "Lady Arya, enjoying the evening air." "Walking with my father before his departure tomorrow." She joined him beside the fountain, its gentle splashing providing ambient privacy. "He mentioned you consulted him about the council position." "Professional courtesy." Thorn's tone remained carefully neutral. "Your territorial connections matter in diplomatic considerations." "They do." Arya gathered her courage. "I've decided to accept the position." Something brightened in his expression, quickly contained. "The council will benefit from your perspective. And after implementation is secured, I've considered dividing my time between territories, maintaining connection with both responsibilities." An elegant solution. His voice remained steady, but through the bonding, she sensed ripples of emotion beneath his composed exterior. "Assuming both territories find this arrangement acceptable." "Do you?" The direct question emerged before she could reconsider. Thorn turned fully toward her, then diplomatic barriers falling away. "You know I do, but my preferences aren't what matters here. Your freedom to choose does." "What if my choice includes you?" The words hung between them, honest and unguarded. Not from obligation, not from tradition or politics, from genuine preference. The ritual bond between them surged with sudden intensity, his carefully contained emotions breaking through professional composure. "Arya," her name emerged like a prayer. "I would never presume." "You're not presuming I'm offering." She stepped closer, the connection between them vibrating with shared feeling. The bond formed during ritual, yes, but it revealed something that already existed. Something worth exploring by choice rather than circumstance. For a moment, Thorn remained perfectly still, as though afraid sudden movement might shatter this fragile moment. Then slowly, deliberately, he extended his hand, palm up between them, an arm offer, not a demand. "If you're certain," he said softly. Arya placed her palm against his, the simple touch amplifying their connection. "I spent my life having choices made for me. This one I make for myself." The future still held uncertainty. Implementation of reforms would face resistance. Territorial management would require delicate balance. Personal relationships would develop at their own pace without predetermined paths. But for the first time, Arya faced these challenges from a position of genuine choice rather than desperate necessity. As Thorn's fingers curled gently around hers, the white Omega who had arrived in chains completed her transformation. Not into Luna or queen or political symbol, but into something more profound, a woman standing as equal, choosing her own destiny with clear eyes and open heart. The mountain fortress that had once seemed a prison now represented the beginning of something unprecedented, something that would reshape not just their lives, but the society they both served. "Whatever comes next," Thorn said quietly, "we face it standing together, never one above the other. As equals." Arya agreed, the words sealing a covenant more binding than any forced submission could ever achieve. In the garden's tranquil embrace beneath stars that had witnessed centuries of wolf history, a new chapter began. Not from purchase or bargain or political alliance, but from the most revolutionary act possible in their world, choosing each other freely with full awareness of all it would mean. The heart's bargain made not with gold or power, but with truth and mutual respect, creating something neither had imagined possible when their paths first crossed. Something worth every struggle that had brought them to this moment of quiet certainty beneath the mountain sky.